Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Swerve with me. This is a show where we have adult conversations for mature audiences only. We talk to people who have overcome challenges and they're not afraid to show their scars and to speak their truth. And we are so very delighted to have this week's guest with us tonight. So, you know what we do as we come on, or as you come in and join us, go ahead, tag somebody, let them know that Swerve is on tonight. Tonight, we are having a very serious conversation, a very sensitive conversation with someone who has really gone through. And I've known her, I believe, since she was a kid, really. I'm dating myself because she kind of a little oldish herself. But I've known her from she was a kid, and I've watched her mature and become a young woman who's not only a wife, a mother, she's a spoken word artist, she is a singer, she's creative with her hands, she makes candles and soaps, and she's a photographer. And that's just a small snippet of the gifts and talents that God has blessed her with. But most of all, she is someone who has had her share of grief, and she's learned over a period of time how to manage that grief, and more importantly, to teach others and to stand by others as they go through similar situations in their lives that may be traumatic. And so, this is a very important conversation tonight that I was so looking forward to having, because I believe that so many others will be able to benefit from this conversation tonight. So, as I said, go ahead, tag somebody, let them know that Swerve is on, and I want to welcome and present to you my guest tonight, Mrs. Jennawade Pratt. Good evening. Where is she? Come on. Alrighty. Why are you acting like this tonight? Okay, here we go. Good evening, Jenna.
Good evening. How are
Hi.
you?
Doing so well. You see, they already start trying to play tricks with us, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
thank you so much for sharing uh, this platform with me tonight. You know, when we have conversations like this, I don't take it for granted that people open up and begin to give us a glimpse into their personal life, because these are personal stories that have impacted you and to impact your family. Because every time we tell stories, those who are connected to us are also
Right.
exposed as well. But
Right.
there's so much to talk about, but I wanted to focus in particular on your story about having miscarriages. It's a sensitive topic that a lot of women face for varying reasons, and it's not an easy thing to talk about. But let's roll it back to the beginning, because you have a son, a handsome son, by the way. His name is
That's
Caden,
true.
and he's
That's
about
true.
what, 16 or 17 now?
He's 16 years old.
16 years old. So you had
Yes.
Caden 16 years ago, and you married. And after having Caden, when was it that you decided that you would entertain the idea of having another child?
Okay, so Caden is, I think at that time, Caden was probably about 10. I can't recall, but I do know that we had decided that maybe a year or two into the marriage, you always say you want to have that honeymoon phase. So we gave ourselves a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then we said we'll try again. And so we were going through that whole, of course, being married now, like I'm like harassing my husband, like, okay, let's be married now. Let's just have it. He's like, no, no, seriously, 2 years. I was like, okay, you promised me 2 years. So we going by 2 years. And what happened within that time was we had, with the very, very first child, um, we found out during our anniversary time. So it was like, all this excitement is like perfect anniversary gift as far as, you're concerned. You're like, okay. Um, but I think within a few weeks, I personally, my husband, he gets upset at me when I say this. It's this thing that I say to him when I know, you know in your body that something is wrong. And I looked at him and I said, something is not right. And hindsight would tell him every time he heard me say that during each of the losses or during each of the pregnancies, he would hear me say something isn't right. And he'd be like, oh boy, because you know your body. So with the first one, It was, you know,
How far were you along before you felt like something's not going right?
I personally thought that I was only about maybe but probably about a month, let's say 4 or 5 weeks in. But in actuality, with the first one, we were about 9 weeks and 3 days. And that's what it is. So before I go further, let me explain to your audience that I was experiencing an ectopic pregnancy. And at that time, even though I have heard about it, I read about it, I've never sat down and say, oh, there's a possibility that I'm having an ectopic pregnancy, because you don't want to think those things. I never in my life did I think that I would be the person saying, hey, I had an ectopic pregnancy. And
So, first of
so
all, before you go on further, for those who are unfamiliar with what an ectopic pregnancy is, explain that.
okay, so an ectopic pregnancy is when the baby it is fertilized. There is conception, but it does not go in the place that it's supposed to go. So instead of being in my actual womb, in my uterus, the baby was in my fallopian tube.
Mhm.
So that's where I started to experience pain, and you're feeling the pain. You're like, oh, it's just probably a part, the normal part. You would then experience everybody's experience is different. And the thing about it was, what scared the doctors the most with me was I have a very, very high tolerance for pain. And so having that high tolerance made it difficult for them to exactly figure out what was wrong until they went ahead and they did an ultrasound. So without the ultrasound, they were just like, she's walking about normally. She looks fine. They literally had canceled out ectopic pregnancy. They're like, this it's impossible for her to be have an ectopic pregnancy because she's not complaining of any of those signs in any way. But when they went ahead and they did the ultrasound, they were like, oh yeah, that's what this is. And every single technician during the all four yes, all four of the ectopic pregnancies, every single technician would look at me like, are you in any pain? I'm like, no. you know
So the symptoms were the same for each one that you had for you. The symptoms were the
they
same.
were they were similar, but they happened at different times during the I would say during the
No,
second ectopic pregnancy.
don't let's move so fast to the second.
I think, and it's crazy because when I'm telling as I'm talking to you about it, it feels so weird because when I going through the process, it is a it feels like they were all like almost like a blend because you're dealing with the that same grief. So it was like almost like a
Mm-hmm,
blend,
mm-hmm,
even though they happened at different times. It was almost like it happened simultaneously. I would tell people that I was numb during the second and the third, but the fourth like woke me back up to all the pain. It was weird.
mm-hmm. So with the first one, um, and you said it was about you were like about 9 weeks in when you started
nine
to
weeks,
feel something going on. You go to the
right.
doctor and then they tell you about this ectopic pregnancy, and then what?
With the first one, I did not understand the concept that you could move the baby from one section to the next. And to this day, I'm still like, you mean to tell me we're not so scientifically savvy that we can just take this child from this spot where it's and say, oh, okay, you're in the wrong place. Let me help you navigate. And so when my very first one, I think the doctor, she did not know how to deal with me. We were in the emergency room. I looked at her and when she told me what it was and she explained it, I said, well, can you move it from one place to the next? And she choked up and she was like, no, we can't. And I was looking at her like, you're telling me that my baby can't be moved from one, like, what's going on? And I couldn't grasp it, especially in that moment. And I always tell people in those instances, time literally stops. Like it doesn't go still, it literally stops because now I have to explain to my husband what's going on, and I think I it's something in every culture. Your thing is you're supposed to have children. And so here it is. I'm standing back and saying, okay, there's like this almost a shame to say, how do I tell these people that this child doesn't exist anymore?
Mm-hmm.
How do I explain that? How do I need to now process this to tell them that. And so I think at that particular point, it was more of I can't even explain it. It's a weight that rests on you, and that weight, that experience puts a fear in you, because even when we move on to the second one, I was hyper vigilant. I was very, very aware. I was trying my hardest to pay attention to everything that was going on, and it makes it gives you, it's this anxiety, and everyone is saying, "Oh, it's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen again. It happened once. You're fine. It's not going to happen again." But it happened again.
So, how much time in between the loss of the baby the first time did you try again the second time? And were you
We
consciously trying again?
No, we weren't consciously trying again, but it was like over. It was about a few months to a year. Like I say, 8 months to a year.
Mhm.
Um, or it may have even been more than a year, because that was a let me step back and breathe moment. Because you're saying, yes, we want to, we're trying for this child, and at the same time it's like, I don't know if I want to try for this child. So it's like there would be days when I'd be like, um that 1 month will go by and be like, okay, okay, that was good, nothing happened, so I could breathe. But then there still was that hesitation, like, I need something to happen because we need to have this baby. And it's so weird because it's this your emotions are literally, you're literally on this emotional roller coaster. So you're excited, kind of excited that it's not happening, but then you're disappointed that it didn't happen. But when it actually did happen, like when I did take the test, I'm saying, okay, I'm these feelings are definite, this is pregnancy. So I go ahead and I take the test again. We find out that we're pregnant, and I go into this mode of, I think that same day I found out, I was like, I have to go to the clinic now, because they have these things in place saying, you go when you see your next pregnancy test, it's positive, go straight to the clinic, get the paperwork that helps you with your imaging, carry that to a specialist, let them do the imaging. And it was so crazy. I was trying my hardest to get from place to place, in the clinic, going from nurse to nurse, trying to get this paperwork. And they all were saying, "Oh, you good, you good, don't worry about it. It doesn't happen, it's not going to happen again." I was like, please, can I have the paperwork, because I want to go about this the right way. I just want to rule out everything. And when I went in, they finally gave me the paperwork. It took me about almost an hour, but I was not giving up. It took almost an hour. I took that paperwork. I think I had already scheduled an imaging appointment. And because I was like, we're not doing this again. But when we went in, I did my imaging appointment, and of course, petrified,
Mhm.
terrified, because my thing is, there's a possibility, because I think at some point during that time, I felt this tinge at my side, and I was like, let's just, get this knocked out. Just want to make sure. I'm going to be hyper vigilant until they say it's in the right place, and then we can relax. And so went ahead, went to the technician. The technician is going to be crazy,
Mhm.
um, because what I did was I went in. It was a very, very, very early ultrasound too. So they went in with the original, just the belly,
Mhm.
the jelly on the stomach, and then they had to go in and do something that was more what's the word?
In
Well, anyway,
depth.
they went in, right. Yes, let's
Mhm.
use in depth. They went ahead and they did something that was more in depth, and then he was like, I see where the sac is supposed to be, but I do not see an actual child. And so we were like, okay. And he said, well, this is an ectopic, and it I felt myself spiral.
Mhm.
And at the spiraling, at the same time, I was trying to keep my composure, because we're in a imaging area with women who are pregnant in their different phases.
Mhm.
And the type of person I am, I don't want you to feel sorry for me, and you're supposed to be enjoying this journey that you're on. And so I remember walking out of there so numb, and asking God, like, God, what do but you promised me children, and this is the second time that we're here, nothing's happening, I'm going through this process again. Obviously they're going to consider at this point. I feel like I'm so well versed in what they're going to do, because when I came through the doors the second time, I'm like, okay, I just like to be medically managed. The methotrexate will work. You can have me overnight if you want to, but I'm not going to stay here like 2 weeks like you had me the last time. Can you ensure that my doctors know? It's like I already have in my
This
mind.
routine in your mind about all the things that you need to do. How
This is
far
the
along
process.
were you the second time when you found out?
The second time, I think I was about 8 weeks, but I only knew up until a month, so I did not know until I was in the second month. But I thought the second month was the first month.
Mm, okay, okay.
So here we are, with the third one came right like a few months after. And I was like, okay, so that means this is the rainbow baby. This is the one that is going to make it, because it came so closely after the second one. And so this is perfect. This VRI element. This is perfect. And you praying and saying, okay, God, listen now, listen, God, listen,
Mhm.
God. We've been here, we've done that. This process has been a process. Okay, so this was all, that must have been a test. So this is it. This is number three. We say about three, you know. So,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
let's do this. And I think number three was one of the most difficult for me, due to the fact that they did not, when we went in, they medically managed me again, because I spoke with one of the female doctors, and she said I'll never forget, she had a conversation with another doctor. She said, I understand her plight. She's still young. She's still healthy. She's healthy. There's nothing wrong with her otherwise. I understand why the first doctor's medically managed. And so we are going to go ahead and medically manage her again. So I was fine with that. We did the HCG after that one, to find out what's going on with my tubes, because someone finally said, hey, maybe there's a blockage, maybe something happened. So they went ahead and they did I think it's called a heterosalpingogram, which
Whatever
is
you
where
say.
they
We don't know what it is. We don't know what it is anyway. They did a test.
So they did this test that actually sends a dye into your tubes, and it pushes it out of your tubes to see if. So my tubes they were like, okay, your tubes are fine. However, we're seeing that there is just a little abnormality. So let's just go forward. We went to the fertility doctor. Amazing, Dr. Patterson. He's passed on now, and he gave me his synopsis of the whole situation. And when he gave me a synopsis, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, Jenna, like, whose report do you believe? And he's telling me, he's saying it out loud as he's writing it. He comes and he prays with me, and he's like, I'm going to send you off for IVF. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to try this IVF thing. Like, I'm hearing you. um
So
I a part of me
IVF
was.
in vitro. This is the in vitro like
Yes, yes.
insemination.
He's interested in vitro, and I'm like, ready to go there yet. It's firstly costly. I've had friends who have gone through in vitro, and the process it's rigorous mentally. It's exhausting. I said I wasn't ready yet, so he said, okay, fine. And then somewhere along the line, here comes number four. Number four was, like I said, was the one that woke me up, because number four, I saw the heartbeat. I heard the heartbeat.
Wow. And how far along were you there?
I was about 9 weeks again, like 9 weeks, 4 days, or something like that.
Okay.
And I'm hearing the heartbeat, but the technician can't find the baby.
Mm.
158 beats per minute, but she cannot find the location. And so she calls in the technician, and he was like, of course, I'm still getting you didn't feel this, but with this particular one, though, I remember clocking into work. I worked at the hospital. I remember clocking into work and going into excruciating pain, to the point that I could not sit down, I could not stand up. I had to keep walking, and that was a week before I got admitted. So I mean, it's like I'm saying it's such a blur. It's so much is going on, and this is exactly how I'm saying this is how it feels. So they're looking at me. My doctor, my fertility doctor, he is off the island. He's dealing with other situations of his own, and he has put me in contact with another doctor. And I'm hearing the technician talk to the doctor on speakerphone, and they're saying, "Oh, she has to go straight into surgery right now." And I was like, y'all gonna have to medically manage me like how y'all did all the other time. She's like, no, sweetie, you don't understand. There's a heartbeat. You have to go into surgery. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have to like rush you in right now. And that's when it hit me how serious it was. And so me and my stubborn self, I still didn't go right to the hospital. Like I said, let me go home and get my stuff. I want to get my stuff. I drove to my pastor's house. I called and I told them what was going on. I spoke to them and they said, come to the house. And I said, I'm not going into surgery without prayer. And they prayed over me and they let me sit there and breathe and cry. And they cried with me. And then they said, if this is the will of God, if this is what this is the journey, this is the process that you're going to go through, then go with God. So I packed up because my husband is horrible with packing. I've experienced I've experienced his packing, remember, 3 times previously. I've experienced his packing. we we're not going through that again.
Mhm.
I need to make sure
Everything
that I
is there.
have yes, I need to make sure. So I took my time and I packed and I sat there and I said, God, we going through this again? Like I don't get it. I don't understand it. What have I done? Like what have I done? Like
Mhm.
that was the process that was always going like what have I done? What have I done? What did I do wrong? And I went in and I remember they had the surgery was like they rolled me like 1 something in the morning, like 1:15 in the morning. And I remember going in, breathing, taking like 6 deep breaths with the mask on. And then I remember waking up and saying, wow,
Mhm.
what's next?
What's next? So once
And
you
so
left, so 4 back to back. Well, we've talked about the physical things that happened to you, but what was going on with you emotionally? And you did mention the fact that you're at this place where you've lost 4 children and you're asking God, why is this happening? While you were asking God, if you're just joining me, I'm talking to Jennawade Pratt, and she's been sharing her journey of having 4 miscarriages. I mean, one is just heartbreaking, but imagine 4. And so, what emotionally, how were you feeling? Because you're still functioning, I guess, going to work every day after these successes, miscarriages. What was happening to Jenna on the inside as you had these experiences?
I was an emotional wreck. My faith, I didn't even know how to believe anymore. I wouldn't even say what to believe. I didn't know how to believe anymore. I still was hanging on, you're hanging on by this thin thread. And I realized that my prayers were becoming prayers like, Lord, thank you for waking me up this morning. You know, thank you for protecting us. The prayers weren't as sincere as they used to be. It was more of it was so difficult, like trying to process it, trying to put language to it. It was hard to talk. I realized that I had stopped. I'm a singer, I'm a writer. I stopped singing, I stopped writing. I was in this really, really, really dark place. But at the same time, I still was helping other people. Processing is like being the strong one. You're in a dark place, but you're still helping others process. I know that I wasn't able to I wasn't able to hear babies. I could see a baby, but I couldn't take when they started crying, I would black out, like literally blank out. And you would have to be like, hey, 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 you good? Um, I remember this one point, I felt like I had lost my mind. Like I really felt like I had lost my mind. You could not tell me. I was getting ready to walk to Sandilands. We don't live far from Sandilands. We're like probably like a 15-20 minute walk. I was ready to walk to Sandilands, and the only thing that stopped me, my grandmother called and she said, hey, I'm just calling to check up on you. And when she said that, I normally Normally, she calls, I would say, "Oh, hey, Grammy, how you doing? I good." But I couldn't. I remember just saying over and over and over to her with tears in my eyes, "I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this." And she literally was like, "Okay, Jenna, I hear you. You're good." Like she was talking me through. She's like, "It's okay." I never told her I was literally on the way to walk to Sandals. I didn't tell her that. But I realized in that very moment that there is a very thin line between grief and insanity.
Mhm.
Very
So
thin.
share you told me about an incident after one of the miscarriages that you would have gone to NIB. Tell the audience about the experience that you had. This is for our international guest, national, what is it, National Insurance Board. So tell them about uh, having that experience there, where you had to go and get like sick benefits or something, right?
Right. So here it is. This RNIB is like their social security benefits. And so I go in. I have I have to go in because at this point you either have to have someone sign off you sign off and say, hey, that person can go in on your behalf. But I felt I was well enough to go in. I was automatic. Wrong. Shouldn't have done it. But I went in because I was of the notion that babies wouldn't be there. Right. So I go in, I literally go in looking around, looking for children. Okay, no babies are here. I'm good. I go in,
Because
I sign.
whenever you saw a baby, that would be a trigger for you.
Right. It's because I know that I see a baby, I'm gonna hear them soon. And so I go in, I tell them what the situation is, they get my paperwork together because now these are papers that have come down from my place of employment to get everything sorted out. And so I stand on the line. I'm standing on the line and I noticed that this lady has this newborn baby in her hand. And I'm like, oh Lord, I hope she fed that child. I hope that child going to sleep. I can't take a whale. I already know that I cannot handle crying. I already know this. Um, Standing on the line, waiting, and I hear the baby start to act up. And I'm like, oh God, not right now. And the baby starts hollering. And with that moment when that baby started crying, I completely blacked out. I'm standing on the line, but it's like I'm not there because I'm now trying to bring myself above the sound. I'm trying to stay as focused as I can, but it's so difficult because every time this baby cries, my heart breaks and it's breaking and getting heavier and heavier. And the bell rang and it was my turn, and I did not hear the bell. I'm hearing it, but I'm not hearing it. And at some point, this lady in the line gets so frustrated with me and she was like, you don't hear? Come on, mom. We have things to do. You can't hit the bell. Go, go, go. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I really did not realize that it was I'm so sorry. I'm because all through this I'm apologizing to everybody else. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I go walk up to the line and she's like, everybody have things, everybody have problems, everybody have issues. And I looked at her dead in her eyes and I said, oh, so you have a dead baby inside you too? And when I said that, I was mortified. I was mortified. And I was like, the whole line went quiet. And then everybody looked at her like, you didn't leave it alone. And if that lady, if she's watching, I'm so sorry. So sorry. But that was I've never had outbursts like that. And that is when I realized that, maybe I shouldn't be out in public right now because I was still trying to just go with the flow. I was trying to ignore everything because this is where I was talking to you too about it being so taboo. I was trying to live my life normally because everybody else around me had already gone back to normal. No, everybody didn't know. There were some people who knew, and there were some people who didn't know that I had suffered these miscarriages. And so it was difficult navigating, trying to seem normal, trying to act normal when I was not normal. So that was the most difficult part of the whole journey. Trying to look normal when everything was crashing on the inside.
What did you do as an outlet or to have some kind of relief, or you just kept it all bottled inside?
I know my husband can tell you that I had his ear and his shoulder were everything, but I also knew that he needed to grieve too. And so I tried my hardest not to um always come, because it's men grieve differently. Everybody grieves differently, but men definitely grieve differently. My thing was I had to literally had to go back to my creative roots. And that is when I created my very first anxiety bracelet, which was something I knew that I needed something for when I go out into public. I needed something to wear, something to keep me focused on what I was doing. So this isn't the exact bracelet, but I would wear things like this where I can feel it. If something, if a baby starts crying, I would literally have my hand, I'd be like this, trying to focus. And so what I would do is for those losses, I went ahead and I created an anxiety bracelet that represented each loss with a pearl. There's a charm that I'm wearing now. I don't know if you can see it, which is actually the charm from my business, which is a seahorse. And I can tell you, I'll explain the seahorse to you a bit later. But at the same time, so it was just like trinkets and stuff on this one bracelet, different colors that represented different things for me, because I am prophetic, and so it was like a prophetic. It's a prophetic symbol to me too, like the with the promises and just maintaining my sanity really in public. So I would literally be like this. Like if you saw me out, I would be like this because I needed something to keep me focused and something to keep my attention when I was processing that. So art, um, creating stuff, being intentional about the art that I did. Now with the seahorse, the reason I'm wearing this one is at some point my husband noticed I was losing it. Like I literally not eating, not thinking, not talking, barely sleeping. So he carried me out and we started doing this this happened at the very, very first miscarriage. He would carry me out to the beach. We're not far from the beach. We're in a more of a mangrove area. And he would just carry me out just to watch the water because the water was always my thing, my calm, so happy place really. And when he carried me out there, I spotted it first, and he was still trying to figure out what I was looking at because what we would do, he would carry me to the beach, I'd carry my camera. So I'd take pictures while we are out there and then look at the pictures later. There was this little star. Well, I found that it wasn't a baby. This is the actual literal size of the starfishes that are here in the mangrove. This is the literal size. And I reached out and I caught him in my hands. He's like, "What is that?" I said, "It's a starfish." I mean, I'm sorry. I said, "It's a seahorse." And he was like, "It's a what?" I said, "It's a seahorse." And I showed him it. He's like, "How did you spot that?" I said, "I don't know." And I felt like that was God talking to me because I was like, "God, if you don't talk to me, I think I can lose it right now because I'm seeing the beauty of this place. I know that everything happens for a reason. I live by Romans 8:28. All things come together for good. I know this because I love you." And it was like I need to tangibly, experience that. And then that little seahorse. And that's what my company now is based around, that little seahorse.
So, you are you still triggered by the cries of babies
Oh
or
no, that's the thing because I love babies and babies love me. And so now, if I'm somewhere and a baby's crying, if the mother would allow, I would actually comfort that child on the, give them that little break. So it's so bad right now. I have people that literally call me the baby whisperer
Mhm.
because I always was good with babies, but for some strange reason, I'm better with babies now. I
Okay.
can't explain it. I
Mhm.
can't explain it, but I am so much better. And I'm not trying to brag or anything. But if your baby is crying, like screaming, and you don't know why, bring the baby to me.
You just got it like that.
I just have it. I just have it. And I love it. I love so I'm not triggered by sounds anymore. I'm triggered when I see a person mistreating a baby.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what it triggers me. But other than that, I'm good.
And there was a time when somebody, let me get some comments in. Okay, so Jerusha says you were courageous. Good night, everybody. Courageous to keep trying. Stephanie says good testimony. Ioka says nature works, and you're a strong cookie. That's just the ones that I can see right now. So how did you handle the grief? Because you're a writer, and I know for me, a lot of times when I can't say or I can't find the words to say, I can write down. So, did you journal? Did you seek therapy? How did you work through that process? Because that's a lot. That was a lot.
I found myself journaling a lot, and in journaling, I found myself writing more. And there was a point where there's a ministry that I was a part of, a spoken word ministry that I was a part of, that I took my time and I um, did a lot of pieces and had the opportunity to share those pieces with people. Like, it's not just the actual miscarriage. It's I realized that a lot of people, we miscarry so many other parts of our lives. Like, it's not just the baby, it's the dream, it's the goal, it's that vision. And so when I shared my story through spoken word, I was able to help people understand that, yes, you see me standing here and I miscarried a child, but you know what's worse than miscarrying a child is miscarrying a goal or miscarrying a dream, letting your vision die. And so I think having that opportunity
Hmm.
to share from that platform. Also, there was a point where I did some therapy. I did one-on-one therapy, and then I found myself doing like more what you call social therapy with more persons in the room, and each aspect assisted, each aspect helped me. But I found that writing was really my outlet. Writing was life, literally
What
life.
were some of the things? What were you writing? And you mentioned spoken word. I wonder, can you share a line or a stanza from something that you would have written?
I remember there's a part in one of the pieces that I wrote that explains how um you find yourself, because um the doctor said it and explained it to me. He said, remember, you're going home, and you're going home without the baby. You're still going to go through the process as if a baby was there, but remember, so you have to be patient with yourself. And there was a part where I wrote, when I talked about, pacing the floor with empty hands, because you didn't bring home the promise. There's the promise isn't there. And so um I think that, and
Hmm.
then I trying to understand the fact that, there was a promise, or there is a promise, but that promise didn't come to fruition. So it was a lot of me trying to express how that feels, because you're brokenhearted, but you're believing that God has something better. You're
Hmm.
believing that there's a reason. Like, I went, and at some point I realized that the reason why I went through was to help other people, because like I told you when we talked, I would be in the hospital room. I'm supposed to be in my own bed, and I'm sitting, and you're not supposed to be sitting on anybody else's bed in the hospital. And I'm sitting on someone else's bed, and we're all talking about losses, and I'm helping them process their losses.
Hmm.
We're talking, we had group therapy. We even had like a WhatsApp group. We check in on each other. We're having group therapy right after everybody
Hmm.
has miscarried. And we're just talking and allowing each other to cry. So I think that particular part of the group therapy, the impromptu group therapy, where the nurses were like telling y'all can't do this, it's like sit on each other's bed, but because it's a hygiene thing. But
Right.
that was the most soothing for me,
Hmm.
that aspect. Being able to interact with other people, and then being able to use my voice and spoken word and share it, that was everything for me. Journaling, I came across a journal and I was like,
When you look back and read the things, what the grieving process for you continues? Does it continues? So what do you do on a day to day basis when you feel yourself slipping?
I let myself cry. I let myself, because my thing is, the emotion is there. I'm going to let myself cry, but at the same time, I find myself, like, I do a lot of grounding. So I will sit here and I would breathe, and I'm like, okay, Jenna, what happened? Where are you feeling this? And I would take very, very deep breaths, give myself about 2 minutes, breathing deeply. And I'm like, okay, Jenna, where do you feel this? Do you feel this? Because we carry grief in our bodies. There's a book that calls The Body Keeps the Score. I can't remember who wrote it, but this book they talk about how we carry grief in our bodies. And before I even heard about this book, I already knew because you'd feel it. You'd feel it in your chest, you'd feel it in your shoulders, you'd feel it in your neck, you'd feel it in your back. And so I would ask myself, okay, where are you feeling the heaviness? Because depending on where you're feeling the heaviness, that would determine why you're feeling this heaviness. So was it something someone said? Was it, oh, I just realized I'm another year older? Was it you found, and I think it happens around the time where with me I can sense when a person's pregnant. And
Mm,
so it's like, are they gonna tell me they're pregnant? Or are they gonna try to hide the pregnancy from me because of what I've been through?
mhm,
And and then you're like, you're watching everybody getting pregnant, and you're watching. And so I'm the person who's praying through your pregnancy, like, Lord, please get her past the first trimester. Lord, give us strength for the second trimester. Lord, give us strength for the third trimester. Give us strength for the fourth trimester, because I think the fourth trimester is the most difficult. But it's that process of, okay, God, it's and I'm celebrating them. And I'm like, okay, so
mhm,
when is my turn? And now it's like, I remember it used to be I find that a friend is pregnant, and then I would just you would find me under the covers the following day, because it's like it's so much pressure, it's so hard. And then, like I said, society society, because they'd see you. I remember I went out to a function and my sister saw me, and she's like, oh, you're why are you so fat? And I was like, I lost the baby, what's your excuse? And it's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, you came at me, so I came back. I could do that with family. You
mhm.
came at me, so I came back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, persons, I call it policing your womb. Oh, so when you're not baby for your husband now, y'all been married all this time. What's going on? And I'm sitting there like,
So
behaviors.
when somebody would come, oh, good night, Gisela, good to have you on board. When somebody comes at you in that manner, how have you learned how to manage that? Just to ignore it, or do you address it?
It depends on who it is.
Okay.
If it's someone really, really close to me, or what I consider a close friend, um, I would share, like, I've had miscarriages, and they're like, oh, okay, I understand. If it's someone who is not that close to me, they won't get that much information out of me. But sometimes I find people prodding, and so it depends on how they prod. I would probably let them in. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It actually depends on the situation. It depends on how I feel at that particular time. Because there are days where I can say, if a person asks me, I can say, well, no, I've had I might say I had a miscarriage. I don't say multiple. I said, oh, I'm sorry, we lost a baby. And so I'm like, oh, okay. But if it's someone closer to me, I'd be like, well, I've had multiple miscarriages. And so we're taking our time. And some people would understand. Sometimes that opens the door for them to share, well, I've miscarried too, or that's my fear. And then the conversation gets started in that way. But it really depends on it would depend on my mood at that time. I think I'm much calmer about it now. Before, it was like, why you asking me my business? Like, why you can't just leave, be excited or be happy that I'm married and I've been married for so long. Why you have to ask me? Why you policing my womb, sis? Like, it don't take all that. Like, why we doing this? Like, why we, to see the conversation I don't have. That's the thought I'm having in my head. But at the end of the day, it's really, some people, especially older people, they're excited. They like to see babies, and they want to see you, thriving with
This is the
babies and stuff.
expectation that if you're married, like you said earlier, you should be having children. Well, you have a son, and
Mhm.
so speaking of your son, with dealing with the miscarriages, how did you share that with him? Like, what did you say to him? How did he handle it?
For the child who's been praying for siblings for forever, um, I remember we had a, because every time that there is a pregnancy, we would let him know, and we're like, okay, no one knows yet. This is between us. This is a family thing. And I allow him to get excited about it. And if it doesn't come to pass how it should, I would say to him, listen, baby, we lost the baby, but there's still, another chance, or however God has it. And we always say, it's in God's will. And I remember one time we had a heart to heart with him, and he said to me, and this like the whole process, I don't cry, but when I think about this thing that he said to me, it's like waterworks. So I have my tissue ready, so I
Okay,
prepared.
that's okay. That's perfectly fine.
He said to me, he said, "Mommy, I'm gonna stop asking God for siblings because it puts you in so much pain."
Wow.
He said, "I'm just gonna stop." He said, "Mommy, I'm gonna stop asking God for siblings." He laughs and he says, all of his friends are like, "You don't have no brothers and sisters? You're so lucky. You don't know."
Hmm.
But he wants siblings. And so what I said to him, I said, cousins are siblings that God gives you that you can send home. Like, that is awesome. Like, God brothers and God sisters are siblings that God give you that you could
Hmm.
just, when you're tired of them, you could just send them home, you
Send
know?
them home. Wow.
But he's older, and he's still expecting siblings at some point. He's like, "Mommy, I'm not gonna stress you out. I can give you time. Me and God talking the truth. I give you time."
Okay. Okay.
And I'm like, "Okay then." And like sometimes he'll lay on my stomach and he'd be like, "Oh, I hear my brother or my sister." And then I was like, "Boy, if you don't get off me, you could just tell me I fat. You don't have to go through it."
Wow.
I said, "Just tell me I fat." I said, "Mom, you gained some weight. You don't have to go through all of that." But
Hmm.
it's we talk about we're so comfortable with death in the house. We talk about it and we process it. And so he's very well rounded. Like, my fear was he's going to be that child who says, "Oh, God failed my parents, and so I'm not going to be interested." And so I was very, very aware and very careful. I did not shield him like some persons would probably say. They didn't tell their child. I did not shield him. I allowed him to feel the excitement because I don't want him to have that fear of um something amazing is going to happen in your life, and then you panic because you're like, "Oh, what?" I did not want him to grow up with anxiety or fear toward success or a celebration. I want him to, I always told him that I want him to experience every single moment of a celebration, because even if it didn't come to pass how you want it to come to pass, you still know what that moment is like. You're going to cherish that excitement. I never wanted to pull that away from him. And so whenever we're going through any process, we share with him. If it
Hmm.
didn't work out, we tell him, "Hey, it didn't work out." And so in this instance, there was one time he wasn't old enough, but the nurse saw how he looked, like he was so distraught. Like, he was sitting there like, "I can't go in, I can't see mommy. They're saying mommy is good." And so I walked out to see him. They allowed me to walk out to see him, and he gave me this big hug. And the nurse was like, "Oh, he's so sweet. Come in for 2 seconds. 2 seconds, he could come to you." Right? So he came.
Hmm.
He's like, "Oh, so that's how you live in? You just lay it up." Like,
So he brought some joy to you in that moment.
so
Yeah.
it's always comedy. We find, and with our family, we find the joy in everything. We find things to laugh at, because there's no way that something terrible is going to happen in here. We're not going to laugh about it. We will laugh with tears in our eyes. That's how I brought him up, and that's how I want him to be with his family. We are going to laugh while we're crying.
Hmm. Uh, Nika Delaveau says Bahamians can be so insensitive in our approach sometimes, family included. You never know
Hmm.
what someone is dealing with. I think that's people across the board, for Nika, that can apply. There are just some insensitive people out there, and some people just don't know what to say.
It's
They
true.
don't know what to say. And I think all of us as kids have heard, like, if you can't say something nice, like, say nothing.
But they don't
Just
follow their own advice. Like, they
yeah.
tell the children that, but they don't follow their own advice. Like, we need to work on that. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's
quickly.
a major issue. Nayoka says you're a real superwoman. So you were able to help talk to Jaden and make him a part of the process and not
Right.
exclude him from everything that was happening. So obviously he's seeing your peaks and your valleys. He's seeing the emotional roller coaster that you were on, and he sees that that is a part of life. So he's witnessed the joy, he's witnessed the sorrow, and he's been on this journey with you.
Right.
You shared that as a part of helping you in this grieving process. You found the program because you knew that you still wanted you still wanted to you still felt as if the process was not complete for you, even though you were grieving, even though you had sought therapy at some point and everything, but then you took it another step. Tell us about this program that you found, that helped you to deal with death and grieving, and by extension, other people as well.
Okay, so when you say that, when you say in regard to grieving and going through the process, I realized that for me, it was really not just the grieving aspect, but it was the fact that there was a language that I had now learned, and no one was speaking this language. It seems as if no one wanted to take the time to speak the language because grieving is hard. Grieving a baby is even harder. Grieving a baby you've never met is even harder. And so there was like there's an insensitivity, I think, straight across the board, when it comes to these types of situations. Like persons only came to me and told me that they had experienced miscarriages after they found out that I had, and so it's like where this is like a it's like you're a part of a secret society that you're inducted into unwillfully, and then you realize, oh, that's what happened. Like I'm hearing stories from grandparents and other people's friends, and just hearing all these different stories about their losses, but they never ever said anything. And so, like you said, I went ahead, and there was one day we were in the middle of a pandemic, and they told us that when you come out of the pandemic, you should come out with something, and I still think that that's not something that you should tell a person, but we were told when you go into the pandemic, you've been there, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last, so come out with something different, come out having learned something. And so I was doing some research. The pandemic really brought all the grief back, the grief of them losing family members, losing loved ones, my personal losses. And so I went ahead and I started looking for something that would help me and would help others. And that's where I found this program called Going with Grace. And Elua Arthur is the head of this program. And
Going,
so
going. You said going or growing?
going,
Going. Okay.
going. So I found this program, Going with Grace, and um, it was interesting for me how there was the possibility of processing your grief and helping others process their grief. And that was different for me because we don't help anybody else process, only the therapists help process. And so this would, in the end, have me become something called an end of life doula or an end of life planner, which in the States and in Canada, they freely call it a death doula. In Australia, places like that, it's just called a death doula. We can't say death doula here in the Bahamas for
Death
varying
doula.
reasons.
That's Doula. Doula.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is what it sounds like, just how you have persons who are birth doulas who help people, who help persons who are giving birth, death doulas, help people who are dying, not just transitioning, but we also help people who are coming to the understanding that they will be transitioning soon because of some terminal illness. I always say we're all terminal, but when they find out that they have an actual terminal illness that is going to end their life earlier than they expected. They have persons who assist them in getting their paperwork and getting everything finalized, and not just paperwork, actually making sure that the persons who were supposed to get that ring or supposed to get that particular tea set, they make sure that that person, that your everything is sorted out where you ensure that the persons that you want to get certain things get the things that they were supposed to. Because we've heard stories, lots of horror stories about I was supposed to get this and I didn't. Also helping the
So,
caregivers.
so before you go on, so this person, this end of life planner, is someone who would assist somebody in perhaps making sure that they get that will written if it wasn't written, making sure
Right,
that that will is done. Um, you said something about somebody who may have gotten some information that they may have a terminal illness and only have X number of weeks, months, whatever to live.
right,
I just wanna back that up a little bit because coming from a strong Christian society, right? When and we are taught, those of us that grew up in the church are taught that you're supposed to speak life, right? So not to accept the fact that death is inevitable.
right.
We do not know, we just don't know when, but it's inevitable. It's appointed unto man once to
To
die.
die.
That's what the
Correct.
scripture says. So how how do you balance that, or what do you say to somebody with that kind of approach who comes and says, but that's what the doctor say, but that ain't what God say? So does that mean you still should not plan, or how do you handle that?
I tell people in those instances, I understand that, I believe where you're coming from and I understand where you're coming from. But at the same time, even if this is not your time to go, you still need to start preparing, start putting things in place to ensure that your family knows exactly where your paperwork is, that they know to look under the mattress when they're looking for certain things, that they know that in the second shoebox on the right is where the paperwork is for certain things, because you want your family at peace. You do not want your family scrambling trying to find your insurance documents. And when I explain it to that, you still have some people who are like, mm-mm, you talking death, you're trying to bring death. But then you have people who are like, I understand. Because my thing is, if you even take the time today to start writing down where certain things are, what your passwords are for certain items, and you put them in a safe spot, have one person who knows, who you can trust, and you say to them, if something happens to me, if I have to go into the hospital and something happens to me, go under the mattress, the left side of the mattress, and I need you to pull out this paperwork. It's in an envelope. That is the stuff that I need to be done. It's important that you have that. And even in some instances, you have situations where you would literally see, like, even when a person says, okay, well, I have this particular, like, let's say dementia, I'm gonna remember. But you're not going, we already know that dementia slowly, um you will lose those memories, and you're not going to remember everything. And so I tell them, I understand that this is how you feel. I'm young and I still forget. So I just need you to write it down and put it somewhere and let somebody that you trust know, hey, if something was to happen, I need this. This is where it is. Even down to medications, because there are times when persons can't speak, down to medications, doctor's appointments. When was the last time? I'm actually working on a little book right now, whereas you can write all those things down and you just hand that off to the person who needs it,
Hmm.
because it's easier that way. And there are things that I probably won't remember to ask you, but at the same time, I also want your final months and your final years where you're working toward something of legacy, something keepsake wise for your family. And because I use creativity from my grieving, I always feel that a person should use creativity. They're still alive. We grieve differently when we're alive. So I already know that, okay, my mother said that this is the situation. The doctor said they gave her this amount of time to live. I'm not gonna just grieve when she dies. I'm now grieving the moments that we didn't have. I'm now grieving the opportunities that we didn't get. And
Hmm.
so let me take those moments instead of grieving. Let's make beautiful memories. Let's create something together. And that's where I come in. And that's the niche for me. Let's create something beautiful together. Let's sit down and remember. Let's have memories. That's where the living wake aspect comes in, where instead of you waiting until the person dies, give me my flowers while I'm alive. Everybody come together. We're going to plan an event and we're going to just have a beautiful time. And you're going to tell me how you feel about me while I'm here you know and so it's not getting rid of the grief, it's alleviating some of that grief. It's that person telling you it's okay if you cry, it's fine, or child, don't cry, because so it's having those moments And I think that we really, as a society, we are so fearful of death that we don't understand that, yes, it is a part, it is a cycle. It is final. There is a finality to it. But at the same time, it is a cycle of life. And I would prefer my family to leave me with more memories than more what ifs. I should have. I didn't let them know, like that sort of stuff.
So it sounds like this is something that you don't have to wait until you're sick
Right.
or somebody is at the verge of death to begin this end of life planning, just to have things in place, because
Correct.
from what I'm hearing, it really would help to alleviate that. I wonder where they put the will. I wonder where the blue book is with
A
the
lot of that.
numbers for Uncle Tom and Addie Sue, and if
Right.
all of this stuff is sat down and planned, especially while the person is in what is it, coherent, and
Right.
has the ability to make decisions, to say what they want, exactly what they want. And some people do that. You would hear stories from time to
Right.
time with somebody saying that my grandmother wrote down everything that she wanted for her service or something like that. But this is by extension literally planning the life of where what certain things are, where they can be
Right.
found. If you have that safety deposit box, this is where the key
Right.
is.
Yes.
That kind of stuff that I can see can be useful for anyone at any period of their lives, and particularly for those persons who would have. It just seems like there's just been an exaggerated amount of death over the past 2 years. I mean, people are dying all the time, and we're aware, but for those people who have suddenly lost loved ones, family members, friends, colleagues as a result of COVID, totally unexpected, didn't even know it was going to happen. That kind of grief, I mean, I don't know if you can prepare for any grief, but sudden losses, like I yeah, that has to be really difficult. And then in the midst of dealing with a sudden loss like that, having to organize all of these things is an added
Right.
pressure. So it sounds like what you're doing is something that definitely would be useful for anybody at basically
Correct.
any stage in their adult life.
Correct.
If
Correct.
you're
So
willing to
when
make
someone calls me, right, because when someone calls me, if someone calls and says, "Hey, I need," they say, okay, I tell them, well, I don't even tell them what I do right after, like, if they call me, I'm like, what do you need? What do you need done? And we find out how I can assist them in getting certain things done. Sometimes it's as simple as I just need to make sure that this paperwork is in place for me now, or it's I just need to create something for a loved one who's passed on. I've had friends, I have had persons come to me and like just a lock of someone's hair. Or I also life gas. So I'm the person that I and the thing with keepsakes and memories, I'm the person that you come to and you're like, okay, I want to do a life cast. People come to me for like the anniversary ones and the
live cast. What is that? What do you mean?
a life cast is actually it's using a type of cement and creating a mold. So I make a
Okay.
mold with your hands. So
Hmm.
you give me your hands, you're holding them, you're holding hands, or if it's a family, we set your hands up a certain way on the table. I go ahead and I create a life cast for you with so you're holding hands. Persons ask me for that when a person is alive, when they're celebrating an anniversary, some family event, but I can also do that when a person has died. And so like it's a lot of things that are offered for celebratory purposes can also be used later. And so I always ask you, how can I help? Because some people just need help organizing stuff. Like I said, when it comes to the point of like I'll have somebody say, when I close my eyes today or tomorrow, I don't want my daughters fighting over this. One particular daughter asked me for this, I'm going to make sure that she gets that. So we find ways to get that done. So that's even something that we call Swedish death cleaning, where they go in and they say, okay, I don't need this anymore, I don't need that anymore, before they die, they can say, okay, those somebody wanted these, they can have those can throw away, these are for such and such a person. So they put things aside. I also, so like I said, different aspects, because I've had situations where I've told persons their loved one passed on. They didn't get the opportunity to really talk because they were active in one moment, and they thought they had time, and then they just go aphasic. There's no more voice, they're not talking anymore. Or they go unconscious, and I say to them, okay, bring me some clothing. I even make the cute little bunnies, and I my focus is kids. Like, definitely my focus is definitely children, because they grieve different. They don't understand that Grammy isn't coming back. They don't understand that. And I'm so careful about what I say to kids, because if I tell, like, in regard to my son, if I told my son that God decided that he wanted to take the babies, I don't want him to be upset with God.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to be as open as possible. We don't know what happened. We don't know what was wrong. The baby may have been sick. Something may have happened, and my body, because of biology, and we talk, and so my body did not allow it to go to where it was supposed to go, and so this is what happened. And so I try my hardest to explain that, because I do not want to say God took that person away to a child, because a child is going to say, so God takes things I love. That means God doesn't like me. I've had that experience talking to a child who came to me and said, Mommy said that God took Grammy because God wanted Grammy. And because God is God and he's so big, then he took Grammy and I didn't get a chance to tell Grammy bye. And so I'm mad at God
Mm.
because I feel like I needed Grammy more than God needed. So you have to be so careful. And so I try to do little things for children. Um,
So you would
with
take like an article of clothing or something from the grandparent and make
We
like
create teddy bears. I'll
teddy
create a
bears or
bunny or a
something
teddy bear.
for the child.
Right,
Any kind of
right.
keepsake. So, for those of you watching, I didn't mean this conversation to take a morbid term or turn or anything, but I just wanted to talk about what I think is the importance of that planning and how I can see where it can alleviate some of the stress that's inevitable whenever there's a loss of any kind. Because sometimes there's not clarity of mind at the time. Sometimes you don't want to make decisions. You just don't want it to be bothered with it at the time. And so if these things are in place, then somebody could pick that up and just run with it. While if you're the person who was closest to the person that was lost or whatever, you can have a moment to exhale and to catch yourself. So that's very important. So as you move along, you each time you how do you feel each time you're helping somebody who is going through this process?
Okay. I find that I feel for them in the way that you're never not affected.
Mhm.
You're never not affected. And so I give honor to every family that I go into by, firstly, when I pull up to their house, to that location, I am preparing myself to drop everything that I came with at the door, because what's going on, the world stops for them. In that moment, the world has stopped. They are trying to navigate, they're trying to process, they're trying to sort out. Some people are trying to find more time. So you have some people who are scrambling. Everybody grieves differently. Some people are scrambling, trying to find more time. You have some people who are reserved and have come to the point that, okay, this is it. When I come in, I don't want to come in with any of my issues, any of my drama, whatever it is that I have, I leave it out there. When I walk in, I automatic and I from I was young, I would always feel, I would feel how this family's feeling. I'm very empathetic. And so I walk in, and I don't say anything right away. I'm looking to see, because I can say this family needs this, but they can actually need something else. So my job is to listen actively. So I come in and I look at the scene. I can say, okay, she obviously needs to take a breath. She needs to focus. I can say all these things, but at the end of the day, it's what that person wants me to do. So I come in and I ask, how can I help? What would you like me to do? Even if it's making tea, even if it's okay, you look flustered. Do you want me to take over? Even if it's that, because I'm assisting non-therapeutically. I'm not giving medication. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving advice in that regard. I'm the person who's just I'm the extra set of hands. I'm the extra set of eyes. I help where I can. And like I said, even if that's making a cup of tea and giving that person a moment to breathe, I'm the person who, if they want to talk, we can just talk. When it comes to the actual person who is transitioning, if they want to talk, we can talk. They have questions sometimes. And I think that's what got me into this really. I always felt like no one should die alone. And then I also feel that some persons are afraid to die. And even we're afraid to die just being human, day to day living. But when you are actively transitioning, there's a fear sometimes because no one knows what's on the other side. I've been holding on to these beliefs for my whole life. And I don't know if those beliefs are what I'm going to meet on the other side. And I'm not coming back to tell you, yeah, that's it, or no, I was, I'm praying you don't, but um we there's this, and then there sometimes there's like this unfinished business. There were things that they didn't get to say. There are things that they didn't get to do. They have to release all of this. And so
Mhm.
if I come in with my issues, my drama, my stress, and I'm gonna miss that moment where you're gonna say to me, I'm afraid, or I don't know how to do this. And what's interesting is at the end of the day, we all know how to do this. We really
Mhm.
do. But it's not spoken of. It's not, we don't talk about it. We don't take the time. I've sat in circles with friends because I'm macabre like that. We just end up talking about death. And I've had friends and I see the uncomfortableness, but they're not going to say anything. And we could be in a big group of us just talking, and I stopped and I said, "Are you comfortable?" No, I don't want to talk about this. Okay, let's not talk about it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not going to continue talking about it because that's what I want to talk about. So it's active listening, and active listening is more than just listening with your ears, it's watching. And so I go into a house and I'm actively listening
Mhm.
because this person may be arguing over something that has completely nothing to do with what they are arguing, with what's really going on in their mind. They might be arguing that someone didn't put something in the right spot, when in actuality they are afraid to lose their mom or their dad, and they don't know how to take that energy and say, "Hey, I'm scared that this is happening." So I
Mhm.
go in as an active listener. So whatever I'm needed to do, once it's legal and in my capacity, I do that.
I want you to from your own experience talk to people who, because oftentimes people don't know what to say to a person that is grieving. Um, Sometimes nothing needs to be said, but I want you to talk to the people who may um, be dealing with someone who's grieving for whatever reason it may be. Like, how should they handle them? What kind of space should they give them? What should they be doing?
Okay, so I would say active listening is definitely something that should be done. And at the same time, when you are actively listening, especially if you know that person and you know how that person normally maneuvers, you know you know what they do, you would it's so much. Firstly, you are there to ensure that they're okay. And when I say okay, I don't mean that they're smiling and happy and everything looks fine. I mean okay as the point where they're not in the process, or they don't look like they're going to harm themselves. Because when you are grieving, they're depending on that relationship that that person has with the person who passed
Mhm.
on, who died. There are things that are completely out of character for that person. So you need to ensure that they're not going to harm themselves in any way. And that is making sure that they realize that you're in the room, assist them, letting them know that you're there, asking them if they're okay. When I'm saying asking them if they're okay, you're just saying, "Hey, I'm here. How are you feeling?" If they're transparent with you, they're going to tell you exactly how they're feeling. And that includes making sure, like, there's no way that you can ensure that a person completely eats, but ensure that they stay hydrated. And that is coconut waters, regular water, Gatorade, things that with electrolytes that can hydrate them. They may not have the capacity to eat, but you can make sure that they're hydrated, ensuring that they get broths. I'm learning now that that's probably the purpose of chicken sauce. When you go to houses, there's always chicken sauce at homes, ensuring that they at least drink a little bit of that broth. Making sure that you're sitting with them and you're just allowing them to have that opportunity to breathe, to cry, to speak if they want to. Sitting with them in silence is okay. But I also tell people when they are grieving, at least have that one person that when that person calls you on the phone, you pick up the phone or you respond. Have that one person who is allowed to get into that space. And so it's kind of twofold, but I always say just be there for that person. You don't have Sometimes you don't have to speak. Just being there is enough. And you would actually know. Sometimes you're sitting with a person and you would actually know when to talk and when not to talk. If you allow that silence to completely engulf you, like it's engulfing them, you would know when to sit, when to speak, when not to speak. And if you're there with them for a certain amount of time, you would know that okay, they need to drink something, even if they take a sip. Ensure that if they're in your presence, they take a sip of water. They take so It's so much. It's a lot. But those are my main. Like when I talk to someone and they're saying they're going in to a person, ensure that they're hydrated.
Mhm. Okay, let's read a couple of comments. Stephanie says, "I'm glad I watched this. She's so happy, beautiful, smart,
Thank
and I
you.
love the show." Thank you for loving the show, Stephanie. Rudolph says, "Phew, the ways grief shows up is crazy." Hey, Rudolph, good to see you. This is really good info to know how to help. And that's important because I think out of ignorance, and that's ignorance is lack of knowledge, and people not knowing how to handle people that are grieving, that's when things roll out of the mouth that shouldn't have been said because they just didn't know what to say, and they may think for some reason they were being helpful when in actuality they really wasn't. It would have been better suited just not to say anything. So
That's human.
yeah. So hi, Galen. She says she loves the show. Thank you. So, the thing about grieving, grief, helping others, being able to serve, being able to help people to prepare for, and I think for me, the main point that I want to raise is this is something that you really don't have to wait until someone is dying
Right.
or you yourself um, is dying on the verge of death or whatever. This is something, and all of us have, I believe, had some experience with someone close to us dying at this point to know that there are certain things that just needs to be done, certain
And said,
questions that need to be answered. You need to know the insurance, if the insurance is available, who's the beneficiary, who's gonna. There's some basic things that you need to know, and I just believe that being able to plan just helps to alleviate because some families experience real trauma. First of all, the death itself may have been traumatic because it was unexpected, and then the trauma comes when it's time for the will to be read, if one is present. If a will isn't present, that's where major issues arise because families separate and
and it can
have
take years.
yeah, major issues and fights in courts, and you have to wait for probate, and it's just like so many things can be avoided.
Right.
So many things can be avoided if all of us take the time to do things like this, and it helps to hear it, even though we don't. I mean, I don't think most people. Let's put it like this: most people don't walk around every day to thinking about death. I certainly don't.
Right.
You know, I'm really more focused on living, right? Trying to do all, and I think that's what most people are. But the reality is, you have to think about it at some point, um, because it's not just for you, but also the people that you leave behind.
Right.
Just just to help to kind of pave the way for them. So we're about to run out of time. So give us some parting words about, again, your experience with grief. Speak to the woman who may not be where you are, which is at the end of your experience, and being able now to talk about it freely. So
Right.
let's talk to the woman, the family, because the husband too, who may be grieving, or the father of that child. Talk to them about how they can. Then let's put it like this: talk to them about the importance, perhaps, of working together if they are a couple. But sometimes some people are not, so first of all, talk to the woman, uh, and then talk to the couple.
Okay, so for anyone who's experiencing, any female who's experiencing what I went through when it comes to miscarriage, and it doesn't even have to be exactly my process, what I went through, definitely, but if you have miscarried in any at any point in time, your child was valid. I think that's the first thing we talk down and we downplay. The baby may not have been here in this earth. You may have had the opportunity to hold it, or you may not have. At the end of the day, your baby was a baby, and your baby was important and still is important as you continue your life, because they have taken a beautiful part in your memory. And so I don't ever want you to feel as if you cannot speak about your child, especially if you've already named them. I don't want you to feel that you don't have to speak about your child. I don't want you to feel that something is wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You know, this is a process. For whatever reason you have been chosen pretty much to go through this process. And I know it's not easy. And there will be nights when you don't understand it. And there will be times when you cry. And crying is good. It allows you to process. No, you will not get over it. You know, people ask you when you're going to get over it. Another child is not going to change the way that you feel about that particular baby. You're not going to get over it. The grief stays, but your experience in your life, it grows, and it gives you the opportunity to look back at your grief and find the beautiful parts of it. You find the ashes, you find the beauty in those ashes. And so I don't want you to ever think that something is wrong with you, or that you're not good enough, because these are things that we start to tell ourselves, but that's not the case. When it comes to a father who's experiencing the loss of a child, I would say the same thing. You know, that child did have that baby put footprints on your heart, and you will never ever 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 forget that child. And I need you to, as a man, communicate with her and let her know that you do feel it. It's not making you weak. It's not taking anything from you in regard to your masculinity. It's actually allowing you to be stronger. And if you are together, it will strengthen your relationship, because you have given yourself the opportunity to talk. And that helps. That actually helps. It might be painful, but it helps. As a complete unit, you will move forward from it. But like I said, the grief doesn't go anywhere. That pain doesn't go anywhere. You literally, your experiences in life grow around it, and it makes it a little less painful. So yes, you won't feel it as deeply as you feel it now. You're still going to feel it, but it's not going to be as heavy. You're going to breathe again. I think that that's the thing for me. And if today you did nothing but breathe, that is fine. Take your time. Your mind, your emotions, especially with a woman, your body is still healing. Take your time. You need time. It's not going to happen overnight. This process took me years. It takes time. And there are times when I still find myself um, crying. Allow yourself to cry. Don't pull those emotions back because you feel like, oh, it's been over a year now. I'm supposed to be better than this. No, give yourself the time, the space, the opportunity to grieve. And that's definitely what I would say to anybody who's processing this.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenna. This has been time well spent, and thank you for being so open to share your intimate thoughts and your story with us. I know It wasn't easy, but it's going to be necessary. Yeah, I know. Tear jerk up for sure. But I want to encourage those of you who are out there and watching and who would come across this to share this with someone, because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's some man or woman, some family out there who's dealing with grief of any kind. And there may be something that Jenna would have said tonight that may be able to help them to process some tip she may have shared, or something that they need to do to help them through their process. And that's what we want to leave with people, that it's okay to grieve. Nobody has a time limit on how long your grief should be. Nobody knows, and they don't have a right to try to put a time limit on it. And just go ahead and grieve, and do it, and reach out for help.
Yes.
Reach out for help if you need it, and connect. She mentioned at least one person that when that phone rings or when they text you or whatever, that even on a day when you don't feel like being bothered, like make that effort to still respond. Because the one thing I do know is that you don't want to stay in a state of depression where it leads to something more severe. You don't want to live there. You just want to visit it. And so reach out for help. Have that one that you can connect to, and that one that you can call. They may not be reaching out to you, but you just need to talk, or you just need somebody to hear you cry, watch you cry, to listen to you vent. Make sure you have that one person in your life who gives you the space and gives you the grace to be able to do that with no judgment. That's what's so very important. And so I want to thank all of you for joining us again this week
Yes.
for another edition of Swerve with me, Jenna. Love you. Thank you so much as you do as you do good work, because it's good life work to be able to help somebody to manage the grief and the pain that they may be experiencing, and to ultimately prevent some because of something that would have been planned along the way. So thank you so much. God bless you and your family. Love you so much, guys. Thanks for hanging with me again tonight. This has been another edition of Swerve with me. Make sure to tag someone, and share it with somebody else who needs to hear this story. So once again, good night, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.